We all know that feeling, right? You're
Yeah.
sitting there trying to plan out this really necessary, difficult conversation. But
Ah.
it might be some sensitive feedback or a performance issue that just keeps festering,
Yeah.
and you get that knot in your stomach.
You delay it. We all delay it because we know just how badly it can go. You're bracing for the defensiveness, the excuses, all of it.
Exactly. But here's the thing, and this is the critical insight we pulled from your source material for today.
Yeah.
The reason these conversations usually fail isn't actually the topic.
Yeah.
It's the linguistic tripwire we step on in.
Uh,
Like the very first sentence, we use language that just, it guarantees resistance before we even start.
mm-hmm.
So today we're doing a deep dive into this really practical new article from the Phoenix Performance Partners. It's called Transforming Difficult Conversations, 5 Essential Phrases.
A great piece.
And our mission here is to pull out those 5 specific phrases that create psychological safety, map out the exact sequence to use them, and just give you an immediate, applicable toolkit.
And that mission has to start with the neuroscience. Why does the old way fail so badly? You mentioned those linguistic tripwires.
Right.
So when a leader starts with something like, we need to talk about what you did wrong, or your performance review is coming up and we have some concerns, that's not just, harsh. It's neurologically self-defeating.
How so?
It immediately triggers the amygdala. That's the fear center of the brain. And as soon as that happens, the prefrontal cortex, the part you need for logic, for reasoning, for problem solving, essentially just goes offline.
So it's like you're trying to talk algebra to someone who thinks a bear is chasing them.
That's a perfect analogy. They physically cannot process your logic. Their brain is in fight or flight. They're not thinking about a solution. They're only thinking about defense.
Right. And if they're in that mode, they can't hear feedback, they can't process it, and they certainly can't collaborate with you.
Precisely. So the absolute prerequisite for any of these conversations is creating psychological safety first. Your job isn't to win an argument. It's to create the conditions for a real dialogue to even happen.
Okay, let's unpack the tools. Let's get into how we actually build that safety. If we want to move from confrontation to collaboration, we have to start with exploration.
Mm-hmm.
And the first essential phrase, and I think this is maybe the most important one, is I'm curious about.
This phrase is a game changer. It's a simple framing, but it's a radical shift. It changes the entire power dynamic.
How does it do that?
It switches you, the speaker, from the role of the judge to the role of a learner. You're no longer pronouncing a verdict, you're asking a question.
Okay, but let me push back on that for a second.
Yeah.
If I'm the leader, don't I need to be assertive? Doesn't saying I'm curious about sound a little weak?
Yeah.
Like maybe I don't know what I'm talking about.
That's a really common fear, but the source material draws a great distinction here. You're not eroding your positional authority. You're enhancing your relational authority.
Yeah.
You're still the one with the authority to ask the question. Think about the difference. Saying, why did you ignore the budget? That's an accusation. It demands justification.
And their shields go right up.
Immediately. Versus, I'm curious about what factors led to the decision to go over the budget this month. You're inviting them into their own thought process. You're signaling trust, not assuming incompetence.
So you get the same information, but without the fight.
Exactly. It just shifts the focus away from blaming the person and onto exploring the context. It's invaluable.
And once you've opened that door with curiosity, the article says we follow up with phrase 2 to really cement that feeling of partnership.
Yeah, this one is help me understand.
You use this when they start explaining their logic.
Yeah.
And maybe you still don't quite get it. And the temptation is to just say, that makes no sense.
Which just shuts them down again. But when you say, help me understand, you're doing something critical. You are explicitly positioning them as capable.
You're saying, you have logic, I just can't see it yet.
Exactly. You're saying there's a gap in my understanding, not a flaw in your thinking. The article points out something profound here. People generally make the best decision they can with the information they have at the time.
Right.
So if a decision looks wrong to you, it almost always points to a gap in information or context or maybe training, not a gap in their basic ability. Help me understand. Assumes competence and invites them to bridge that gap for you.
I love that. Assume competence. It becomes about fixing the process, not fixing the person. Okay, so we've built some safety, we've opened the door. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Now we have to actually deliver the feedback. This is phrase 3.
And this is where we transition from pure exploration to grounded, objective observation.
Phrase 3 is, What I'm noticing is,
And this is the technique for talking about behavior while sticking to the facts. You avoid the huge mistake of labeling someone.
talk about that difference. It's a big one.
It's monumental. If you say you're disorganized or you're always late, that's a statement about their identity, and people will defend their identity to the death.
It forces them to deny it.
Right. But if you stick to just reporting the data, you can have a real conversation. The article uses this great example. Instead of saying you're not engaged in meetings,
Which is an accusation.
it is. Instead, you say, what I'm noticing is that you've been pretty quiet in our last few team meetings, which is different from your usual participation.
That is so powerful. You're not labeling them. You're just reporting the weather. Here's the observable data. The why is left open for them to explain. Maybe there's a good reason. By avoiding that identity attack, the defensive shield stays down.
And the feedback can actually land.
Okay, so once the feedback has landed, and we've used phrases 1 and 2 to understand their context, we pivot. We move from the past problem to creating a future solution with phrase 4.
And that is, what would make this better?
This is where we stop just rehashing the problem and start co-creating the fix. Instead of saying, this process is broken, you turn it into a shared challenge.
Like, given the issues we just talked about, what would make this process work better for you?
Yeah.
The power here is the assumption behind the question. You're assuming they want it to work better and that they have valuable ideas. It shifts ownership of the solution to the person closest to the work, instead of the leader having to dictate everything.
Which leads right into the final phrase, phrase 5, which is all about locking in accountability, but in a supportive way.
This is a big one.
What support do you need?
This turns an audit into a partnership. So someone has just committed to a new action. You don't just say, great, good luck, and walk away.
The old figure-it-out mentality.
Right. Instead of putting the whole burden on them, you proactively offer help. You'd say something like, okay, so you've committed to finishing that report by Friday. That's great. What support from me or from the team would help you deliver that?
So the accountability is still there. The deadline is firm.
Absolutely. The standard doesn't drop, but you're positioned as a partner in their success. And you create a space to identify real barriers before they become excuses later on. It's true supportive leadership.
So if we tie all this together, these phrases aren't just a random list of nice things to say. They're most powerful when they're used in a specific order, right? It's a sequence.
It is. It's a chronological flow designed to bypass that fear response and get right to the solution. The source outlines a 5-step flow. Let's call it the setup, the observation, the exploration, and then the solution.
Yep. The setup. Step 1.
Step 1 is create safety. State your positive intention. Hey, I want to talk about this project, and my goal here is just to understand what's happening so we can find a good path forward together.
Okay, simple enough. Step 2.
Share observation. This is phrase 3. What I'm noticing is stick to the observable facts.
Step 3 is express curiosity. That's phrase 1.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about what's behind that.
Mm-hmm. Then step 4 is listen, genuinely. This is where you use phrase 2. Help me understand, to dig deeper into what they're telling you.
And finally, step 5 is problem solve together. That's where you bring in phrase 4 or 5. What would make this better? Or what support do you need?
Let's walk through that whole sequence with the scenario from the article. It's a tough one. You have an employee, let's call him Pat, who has missed 3 major deadlines.
And this conversation is long overdue. The default, disastrous version,
Yeah.
the don't say version, sounds something like, Pat, your performance is a problem. You've missed 3 deadlines. What's wrong with you?
And boom, Pat's brain has just retreated into a defensive cave. They aren't hearing deadlines anymore. They're hearing, you are incompetent. The rest of the conversation is just noise. No solution happens.
Okay, so let's try the do say version using the 5 steps. We start with safety.
Right, so you'd say, Pat, I asked to talk because I want to discuss the last few project timelines. My only intention here is to understand what's happening so we can set you up for success.
Okay, safety's there. Now, observation.
Yeah.
What I'm noticing is that the last 3 deliverables came in after the agreed deadline, which is, different from your usual high standard.
Perfect. Now you open the door with curiosity. I'm genuinely curious what's behind that. Help me understand what's been going on that might be impacting these timelines.
And Pat might tell you anything. Maybe a key piece of software has been broken for weeks. Maybe they're overwhelmed by another project. Maybe something personal is going on. Whatever it is, you listen.
You listen to understand, not to rebut. And only after that, after they feel heard, do you pivot to the solution.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. I hear you. Given what you've told me, what would make it possible to meet the deadlines going forward? And what specific support from me would help?
It's the same problem. 3 missed deadlines, but the one conversation ends in a fight, and this one ends with a shared plan and a stronger relationship.
But, and this is the core requirement, these phrases are not magic words. They only work if they come from what the article calls the coaching mindset.
What does that mean exactly? It means they have to flow from a genuine, authentic belief that the other person is capable, resourceful, and actually wants to succeed.
Ah.
If you don't actually believe that, then these are just manipulative techniques. They'll sound fake. But if you truly operate from that mindset, the idea that coaching happens in how you listen, not just how you talk, then they become real tools for understanding.
I know what you're thinking if you're listening to this, because it can sound almost too collaborative. Let's tackle the skepticism.
Let's do it.
Objection one. But what if they really did just mess up? This sounds too soft. I need to be direct.
And you absolutely should be direct. But directness is not the same thing as harshness. Think of it this way. You can only be truly direct about the standard when you've lowered the anxiety in the room.
If they're defending themselves, they can't hear your direct message.
They can't. By creating safety first, you ensure the feedback actually gets through their defenses. You haven't gotten rid of accountability. You've created the conditions for it to be received.
Okay, what about objection two? What if I ask, help me understand, and they just don't have a good reason? What if they were just lazy?
Even then, the information you get is vital. If they genuinely can't articulate a reason, you've just uncovered a different problem, right? Maybe it's a huge skill gap, maybe it's a lack of judgment, maybe it's a motivation issue.
You're still gathering data.
You're still collecting information that moves you forward instead of hitting that emotional brick wall. And honestly, you'll be surprised how often starting with curiosity uncovers some hidden context that completely changes the whole situation.
So the real work then isn't just memorizing 5 phrases. It's cultivating that fundamental assumption that people are doing their best with what they've got.
That's it. Your job is to uncover the context and provide support, not just assign blame.
So we've distilled these 5 essential phrases for you. I'm curious about. Help me understand. What I'm noticing is, what would make this better? And finally, what support do you need?
A powerful toolkit.
It really is. And if you want to build this habit, the advice is to start small. Identify just one difficult conversation you've been putting off. Just one. And for the next week, commit to replacing your instinct to ask, why did you? With phrase 1. I'm curious about. And just pay attention to how people respond.
And for your final thought to take with you, consider the cost of judgment. Think about all the crucial information, all the context, all the hidden systemic problems you failed to uncover in the past, simply because your opening line triggered a fear response. By leading with exploration instead of assumption, what new level of insight and influence are you leaving on the table?
Thank you for sharing your sources for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.